Welcome to Mystery of the Soul, where curiosity meets spirituality. Are you curious about metaphysics, the mystical, and the supernatural? Would you like to learn how they are all part of contemporary spirituality? Join me, Leo McCarthy, a spiritual mentor, psychic medium, Reiki master, EFT tapping practitioner, and a shaman.
And I'm Julia LeBlanc, an awakening soul, a doctor of physical therapy, author, yoga teacher, and Reiki master. We hope that our unique perspectives open the door to an amazing journey of discovery.
Please join us and our guests in conversations about spiritual awakenings, our life's purposes, and mysteries of the soul.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mystery of the Soul. I'm Julia, and I'm here with Leo. And we are thrilled to talk to you guys today a little bit more about Anabel. And some of you may have already heard, we had a little kind of teaser recording with Anabel, and we're going to dive in a little bit deeper with her today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Anabel, in just a moment and let you kind of tell everyone more about yourself. And guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. All right. Talk us up. Let everybody know we're out there because we've got some really amazing stuff to share with you. So, Anabel, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, and we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks again, Julie and Leo. So for those of you that maybe didn't get a chance to watch the preview, I'm Anabel. I'm a Quantum Reiki Master, astrologer, the founder of Nuna Therapy, and I help people really reset their nervous system. I work with individuals, with groups, I do events, and I also really love helping people during times of change or transition, or where they're really feeling stuck, where like things keep showing up and they're doing all the work and they're like, why am I still here? Because I've been there and I have experienced that. And so really helping people find clarity and just kind of knowing themselves a lot better is something that I really love doing. So that's a little bit about me.
So, Anabel, I know, and this might be a little bit of a recap for our listeners, but I had asked you about what quantum Reiki is, the difference between that and most people have maybe heard of Reiki, but I don't know that many people have heard of quantum Reiki. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference with quantum Reiki is that, well, maybe I'll back up a little bit. With Reiki, I always see it as like there's an evolution, just like there's an evolution to lots of different healing modalities. And I see quantum Reiki as one of those different versions of Reiki that's out there. And so I would say a lot of like the fundamentals are similar when we're talking about energy healing and how energy works. I think when we're thinking about it at the quantum level, it really starts to get down to the way that my teacher used to describe it is that we're getting down to like the cellular level, and it really starts to impact kind of the root cause of whatever is going on for an individual. It's not just emotional healing, it's not just physical healing, but we really can start to dig into the subconscious. We can go into like, your soul, your past lives. Like there are so many different layers at the quantum level. And that's, I would say, the difference in a nutshell. It's really hard to explain, but I feel like that's really the essence of it.
Can you maybe
Anabel,
tell?
go ahead.
I was going to say, can you maybe tell everyone a little bit about your first encounter with Reiki? Because I feel like that can be that I know shifted things for me. And I could tell you guys all about that. You probably heard it on another show that my first session that I actually had with Leo was really incredible. So can you tell everyone a little bit about your first encounter with Reiki?
Yeah, my first session with Reiki was really at a time when I was really going through a lot. I was going through a divorce. I was just feeling very overwhelmed. I had so many things that were going on emotionally in my life. And at that time, I remember just like, I was holding it all in. I had actually never even done therapy before then. So it's not like I had anybody to talk to. I was just keeping everything bottled up, and my MO is really to kind of implode. Like I'll just like store it, and then eventually like it implodes inside of myself. And that's where I was, where I was trying to, or pretending to be strong and to have it all figured out and to know what my next steps were. But the reality was that was not the case at all. And when I had gone on a camping trip with like a couple of friends, and one of my friends was like trained in Reiki, and she had done Reiki before. And of course she knew what was going on with me. And we were out for a walk in nature, and we had come across this like just like beautiful stream. And I remember it was just flowing, and we were in this like beautiful space. And she's like, "Hey, would you like want to try Reiki? Would you be open with me like, doing Reiki on you?" And I'm like, "Yes, whatever." There was at that point where it's like, I don't even know what this is, but I'm like down for anything that will help me feel better. And it was the most healing experience, because I think because of everything I was holding on to, but also she did it right in the river, like in that stream where we sat on this like big boulder, and the sun was out, and it was just so gorgeous, and the emotions flowed out of me like the water. And that was my first like encounter where I really imagined everything that was inside was just washing away. It was just all going into the water. It was all like leaving my body. And I cried, and there was so much that was coming out. And yeah, after that, I just felt so much lighter, and I was so grateful. Um, and that was it. And, after that experience, like I wasn't like, "Oh my God, what's Reiki? Let me go like sign up for a class." Or no, I sort of took it as I was a wonderful experience. So happy that all this happened, and, life moved on for me. And it wasn't until I would say like maybe 5 or 6 years later where, Reiki comes back into the picture. And and then sort of I'll kind of end it there, but that was, I guess, fast forward to today, that's where I am now.
Annabelle, did you notice, like you said, like when you had that first Reiki experience with your friend, you were already going through a lot of things, and you had probably a heavy emotions that you were feeling. And during the Reiki sessions, you felt like a lot of releases happening, and they did happen. But afterwards, do you remember, or do you recall like what shifted in you, or what like maybe the intensity of the emotions, how they felt different after the Reiki session as opposed to before the start of it? Do you remember that at all?
I don't really remember, but I do know that after the Reiki session, I just found that, I think, and I don't know if this was necessarily attributed to that, but like pretty soon after that, I think I had like realized like, okay, I need like help. Like I need to like talk to someone about what I'm dealing with. And I had signed up for talk therapy and all this stuff. And I was going through like such a massive transformation internally. Not to mention I was like right around my solar return, which in astrology is where, your sorry, not solar return, my Saturn return, which is right around that time when your Saturn placement sort of comes all the way back around to where it was when you were born. And that's a really big turning point in astrology. And it's also a point of the way that it's seen is that it's like the disciplinarian comes into the picture. It's where you really start to become an adult in a way. And it's like this like point of maturity where there's responsibility and discipline and all these other things that the thing is, if you're not ready for it, it doesn't care. Like you're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna be ready for it. And so there was a lot of that was going on in my life. So yeah, I don't know if that Reiki was necessarily a turning point, but it was definitely the start of something for me that, has led me to, again, where I am today.
When you had that experience, were you already into astrology, or how did astrology come to find you, or you find it?
I had always had an interest in astrology from just being a kid. And for some reason, I just I knew I knew my horoscope. Like I knew I was a Libra, and I knew what everybody in my family was. And I loved reading the little summaries about it. And I think I always just had this deep desire to know myself and understand myself. And, and I would do it in different ways, right? Like I loved name books. It's like, what does my name actually mean? What does it tell me about me? What does my sign say about me? Like anything that I could get my hand on that would give me like a better clue about who I was. And now that I think about it in retrospect, maybe I just never really, I don't know, maybe none of us really know who we are really. And maybe that's what we're always looking for. Um, but that was sort of how astrology, when I think about it, like it started when I was little. And then it kind of resurfaced around the time when I got back into Reiki. And it was a little bit like almost at the same time. Like I got into astrology first, and it was around 2020 where, the whole world was upside down. And I'm like, oh, what do I do with myself? And I'm like, oh, let me pursue this thing that I liked at one point. Maybe there's something there. And that just opened up all these other doorways. And Reiki was happening right around that same time for me.
What's a misconception you think people have about astrology?
Um, well, the thing that came to mind was like that it's hocus pocus, or like that it's not real, that it's I mean, there's so many, right? That it's predictive, that it's like I don't know. There's so many, but I think the biggest one would probably be that it's not real, like that it's fake. And I, like when you really begin to understand it and you really start to look at the whole picture, I think when people see astrology, they see one thing, which is what you're seeing in magazines, what you see at the, like read your horoscope, or what's going to happen to you this week, or, and that does feel a little like woo woo. It does feel like a little out there where you're like, oh, that doesn't really that doesn't sound like me, or, right. We have all of these like doubts that start to come in. But when you actually start to study it and you realize that, okay, well, there's 10 planets in total, there are 12 signs, and all of that gets put into a chart that becomes yours, that's completely unique to you. And based on all of the different placements and positions and how all the planets are talking to each other, even how they're talking to each other on like a given day or in a given year, that does influence and impact how you act in the world, how you behave. And it impacts, just even maybe tendencies that you used to have as a kid, or tendencies you might have in a fight, or how you react to things, or why do you think the way that you do, right? There are ways to explain all of that through astrology if you look at it in the right way.
Annabelle, how has astrology either like supported, validated, surprised you about things in your life?
Well, the one thing I want to say is like with astrology, the way that I learned it, it was taught to me in this way of it's about falling back in love with yourself. And that to me was so powerful because I think we all have parts of us that we don't like, or we're working on, or we're trying to change, or even things from the past that were sort of um we were labeled, right? Because I remember like as a kid, I don't know if I was necessarily labeled, but there was always this like, oh, you're so difficult, or oh, there's this, or there was always this like, or I'm like very sensitive, or whatever it was. And I think when you're younger, hang on to those words. You hang on to that sentiment that people have, that it's like repetitive, right? And you're like, okay, that's who I am, that's my narrative, but it feels negative. And then when you actually look into your own chart, you realize, oh, I was actually like born this way, right? And if we're talking about God, we're like, well, God made me this way. And it's about learning to appreciate it and like work with what you've got versus running away from it, versus trying to change it, versus trying to hide it. Cause I think that's what happens. And so I think for me, astrology has just helped to empower me. And like in my head, I'm always thinking like, okay, these are things that I know I need to work on. Like, of course, I know I'm struggling here because that's part of my chart. And so it gives me just a little bit more like oomph in my like in my day, you know? That to me, I think that was probably the most surprising thing, because I don't think I expected to learn that at all. And then once you're in it, you're like, wow, you see yourself in a different way, and then you see other people in a different way. Right? Now you start to understand your partner, your children, your parents. Like there's all these other layers that you can look into, and you look at them with more empathy. You're like, oh, I understand why they're reacting this way. It's not an excuse. And I want to like clarify, right? We're not trying to make excuses for bad behavior, things like that, but you do have more empathy, and knowing that there's like just a deeper level of understanding that you can have, knowing that we're all working on ourselves all the time.
So, Annabelle, if our birth chart shows us what we come in with, how much of life would you say is predetermined versus shaped by our conscious choice?
Yes. So there's this big debate in astrology with fate versus free will. Okay. So my belief is really that I really think that free will is sort of supreme. You can, there are certain parts of your chart, right? Like, or your entire chart will give you clues as to like, these are your strengths. This is what you came in to this life with. These are your challenges. These are your areas of growth. This is what your soul is working on. But at the end of the day, you make the choice to go left or right, to take one path versus the other. And each path is going to determine how that plays out for you, right? If you go down one road, maybe it's just a little bit harder for you than if you went the other way. So that's how I really see astrology. I don't really see it from the like point of view of like it's determining my life, or this is what's going to happen tomorrow, or I don't use my chart in that way. But I'll say that there are some types of astrology, because there are so many different varieties that you can study, that you can go into. So there are some that are more predictive in nature, and that's just, it's cultural. It's just how it's read, right? So for people that maybe are, you know, thinking about getting a reading, or, you know, have been curious about this, really ask yourself, like, what are you looking to get out of your, you know, a chart reading, right? Do you want to know a little bit more of the predictive nature? If so, then you might want to go with like Vedic astrology or Chinese astrology, right? Like more of the Eastern astrology is a little bit more predictive in nature. But if not, if you're looking at it more from like a soul level, you might want to do like esoteric astrology, right? And so really inform yourself about what kind of astrology reading are you getting, and why. And then the other thing I would say is there are certain aspects to astrology, like I mentioned with the Saturn return. Saturn return is going to happen around 28, 29. That's just it. That's what it is, right? So in that way, it is a little bit, you know, pre-planned. It's like, okay, around my 28th or 29th birthday, Saturn is going to come back to the same placement, and shit might get real. Like, you know, and so the question then to yourself is, okay, how do you use that knowledge? Again, free will. How do you use the knowledge of this placement is coming back around these years to my advantage? And that's how you can use both of those aspects of like, there is a little bit of this like predetermined piece where every couple of days the moon is going to move into a new sign. every month you're going to have, we're going to be in a new sign, right? The sun is going to be in a new sign. So how does that impact your chart, and how can you use that knowledge to live your everyday life versus living your life based on the chart, if that makes sense?
I think it makes sense. And I will say, I didn't realize that there were so many different like layers of types of astrology. So that's something that like I think like that's something, guys, I don't even know that stuff. And I ask a lot of questions. So
Yeah.
I think it's, we're always learning. And I think to your point, it's that when you have information that's available to you, it doesn't mean that that's that only piece of information that you should pay attention to, that there might be other information that's out there for you. So it's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast, is because I'm constantly learning about these things. So thank you for that explanation. I have a question. A lot of healers, I think, are naturally empaths. And how do you personally avoid taking on someone's energy and remaining present and compassionate while you're working with them?
Yeah. Well, I have lots of like little rituals for myself. I have to admit, like before going into a session, like after a session, I do a lot of like energetic clearing and visualizing and just making sure I protect myself at all times, because I know that the energy also flows, and unless you're creating a real boundary for yourself or of a barrier, you're susceptible to it. And I would say that that's like the first thing. And maybe I'll just like quickly share a story because when I first started doing Reiki, like I had a friend who was like, "Oh yeah, sure, you could do Reiki on me," right? Because it was like I was in this like trial period, like, "Oh, I'm trying to like do it on as many family and friends as I can." And I went to her place, and she was going through a lot, and I remember and it was so powerful. The session was so powerful, but when I left, I felt completely off. And I just knew my energy felt weird. It wasn't the same as when I walked in. Like it wasn't me. It was something else. And I started freaking out because I'm like, and then of course all of the training came into my head, and I was like, oh no, I didn't protect myself. Like, what did I do? I picked up someone else's stuff up, and how do I clear myself? And so I had this like emergency email to like my mentor, and and then she hadn't gotten back to me like right away, of course. So I'm Googling, like, what do I do? And so I'm taking like salt baths. I'm like doing all of these things to clear myself. I was so scared and terrified. And that was a great lesson for me in you have to have like a habit of the clearing before, the protecting, and then the doing the same thing afterwards. And I think ever since then, I've just made sure to always incorporate it. But other than that, I would say, a lot of in my sessions, I always start off with dialogue with like, people fill out a form, but then I'm like, okay, well, actually tell me what's going on, right? You hear it from their voice. And in those moments, I really just try to imagine, again, there's like a space, like I try to be warm and understanding and be a good listener, but there's always like an imaginary kind of like wall or barrier that I have. And maybe it's a little bit like translucent or transparent, where it's not like a stone brick wall. Do you know what I mean? But it's like it's a little bit softer. So I don't know if that explains it, but it's more of a visualization of knowing that, what's theirs is theirs and what's mine is mine. And I've had to kind of just over the years with practice just learn to differentiate between the two.
I
Yeah,
always
totally,
tell
totally
people,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, I always tell people that you want to keep the energy flowing. So a lot of people, I think, will start to create little containers where they're holding other people's energy. And I say, like, you don't want to be a container. You want to just let it kind of like flow. Like if it comes in, it goes out. So it doesn't stay. Um, is probably like how I would say it. And I mean, Leo and I have talked extensively about different ways to kind of protect your energy, and however people think about it, whatever their thought is or practice is. I think it's a good thing for people to have. Um, and I mean for anyone.
I got a little analogy, Annabelle, as you were talking about that. So if you can imagine a pilot of a plane, right? They can't be distracted. They have to be focused on where they're going to get people there safely. And so all your rituals and protection and clearing and all that that you do is kind of like the cockpit door separating you from the passengers.
Right. Right, exactly. But you still like
But you
you
still,
can still hear them. Like you
you
still know
can.
that they're
Right.
there.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
like they have the system that they can speak over. Like the pilot can
Yeah,
come on
yeah,
and like,
exactly, right. And
transfer that information.
you're still in the same container together.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Annabelle, I think that, as a physical therapist, healthcare providers, like we often do encounter that skepticism around like energy healing. How would you approach conversations with people who are curious but very highly analytical?
Yeah, I've definitely had some people show up and come in for a session, and they literally will ask a lot of questions, right? Like, well, how does it work? That's usually how I know. It's like, okay, so they're tapping into like the right side of their brain. And I try to give as best of an explanation as I can with like what is energy, like how does it work? I mean, this is my spiel, right? Which is like I always say Reiki is based on two principles. The first is that there is energy in everything. And science proves this. There's energy in inanimate objects as well as in living things like you and I. Okay. And so that's the one principle. And then the other one that I like to use is that energy or emotions are energy. And when we are feeling something or we're experiencing something, the goal is to want to process it, to want to like get it out of our system, right? Whether it's anger or grief or sadness or whatever it is. I mean, with sadness, when we're crying, we're processing, we're releasing, right? But if we go through experiences in life where we haven't been able to process, and we, just like I talked about with myself when I was going through my divorce and I was keeping everything stuffed in, I wasn't processing. And that's what happens is I think because things can be really difficult or we just don't have time to process and we have to move on and live life, we repress, and that gets stuck in our body, and then that energy is stuck. It causes blocks or it causes an overactive energy center. And that's how I try to explain it. And I realized that for the like very scientific mind, they're like, okay, but where are the facts? Where's the data? Like, still, how does it work? And I'm like, you have to kind of feel it and experience it to really understand it. And I always like to tell people, just be open to the experience, be open to what shows up. And that is so hard. It's so hard for people who can be very in their heads. Like, I've had some people like tell me, yeah, I couldn't really settle down because I kept like asking myself, like, where is Annabelle now? Like, is she over there? Is she over here? And, they have all these thoughts going on. And it's interesting because that same person has come to see me now a couple of times. And by like the third time, she's like, oh, I'm so relaxed now. Like, I don't even care. And so it does take time. So I think if you're willing to be open, like truly be open to the experience, because I've also had people say like, I'm open to trying it, but that deep down they're still like closed off. Like, really be open with like just no goal, like, well, definitely a goal, right? You want an intention, but no real like idea or plan for how it should play out or what it should look like, right? All the shoulds. And just allow the thoughts to come up, the feelings to be felt, and just knowing that you're in a safe space with your practitioner, again, is super important. Then, I think that can really help with some of the skepticism, because you can only do so much research on energy healing and how it works. And there are some studies out there, and I know it's being used in hospitals and nurses are starting to practice it for patients, but there's not enough. And I would say not enough studies in like bigger populations. So
We're going to take a quick break, guys. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Okay, Annabelle. So question. So for anybody receiving Reiki or an astrology reading or anything where they're going to kind of, something's going to be newly revealed to them that maybe was in their subconscious or a new perspective. Can you talk a little bit about how, when we hear people talk about, oh, now we have to integrate all of this that we've learned, can you give people some examples of what that actually means to like integrate this new information, this new discovery, this new perspective?
yeah, for me, integration has a lot to do with just listening internally. And I always say, like, listen to the subtle shifts that are going to happen over the next several days, maybe weeks. And integration is really like a very internal time. And I think if people can be very conscious of, it's not just, yes, you're going to go back, you're going to live your life, you're going to go back to your work, your routine, your family, all that stuff. But I think consciously being able to like journal, take some time for meditation, take some time for going on walks, like those are all so key to help with the integration process. Because when our bodies are truly at rest, like they are when we're having a Reiki session, that is where things start to flow. That's where ideas start to come in. That's where thoughts start to get processed. That's where emotions start to get released, right? That's like the most beautiful time. And so with integration, even though you're back in daily life of your routine, just building in, even if it's 5 minutes a day, right? It doesn't have to be so long to do something for yourself where you are just kind of like in a quiet space where you're still, where you're able to really just be with yourself. That can really help with, I would say, the integration process. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's good for people to hear like some examples of what that actually means.
Yeah.
The other thing I think worth mentioning is, when we talk about emotional experiences manifesting physically, and like you were saying, it's like with that integration, like go for a walk or something. I commonly will see people that things do manifest physically. So I feel like the physical movement, whether it's breathing, going for a walk outside, just getting out in nature, whatever it is, like that physicality almost helps to not store as much of that emotional memory. But it's also that if that emotion is being held on to in too much or too little or whatever it is, that will cause that physical manifestation. What have you observed in terms of like how or where some of those memories might show up?
Can you repeat the question? I don't know if I understand it fully.
Yeah. So with that like emotional experience and like that physical manifestation, like where would you say that you've seen the body holding emotional memory? Like how have you observed that happen in people? Does that make
Yeah. Okay. Well, to be honest, I mean, we really hold emotional memory in so many of our energy centers, but I would say that the big ones is definitely the solar plexus, like that, like the gut area is just a big space where I'm always, usually that's a space where it needs to be worked on. Like when someone comes in, like there's a lot being held there, but the heart is number one. Like I don't think I've had a person come in that hasn't needed to, work on the heart, like where we've had to work on that space. Because if we think about the heart center, it is essentially the bridge between our upper chakras and our lower chakras, right? If we're talking just energetic centers. And so it really holds on to so much. And that's where I would say that people hold on to a lot. But I also like to work in the sacral chakra too, because the sacral also is where we have like a lot of um our emotions are also live in that space. And so I like to work in that space as well. Yeah.
Julia, I know we have talked about, with my back issues over the last year, stuff has definitely like manifested in those body areas. And now my new issue with this resurgent of this shoulder injury, definitely is I'm seeing some stuff manifest there, whether it was, triggered by something physically I did, but also being supported with like the pain and the intensity from a lot of just whether it's emotional stuff or even like past life stuff. Yeah.
And I'll also say too that, if we're even thinking about, so I was talking about the energy centers before, but if we're thinking about just like body parts or body areas, we have the left side of our body, which sometimes someone will be in a session and like, oh, my left hand has gone numb, or, like they're feeling more tingling on one side of the body versus the other. I mean, now we're starting to get into masculine versus feminine, right? Energies I'm talking about here. So the right side is your masculine energy and the left side is the feminine energy. And so when that comes into play, usually the question I'll ask is like, okay, well, is there maybe it could either be like, let's say it's the feminine side, let's say it's the left side where something's going on. Is there a woman in your life, or maybe that was in your life that, is having some impact on, whatever's going on for you right now? And oftentimes they will say, yes, it's whoever, right? It's, their parent or their spouse or whoever it is, right? So we will feel things sometimes on one side versus the other based on, maybe interactions that we're having, or it could be a boss, or it could be, whatever might be bringing you the stress or the emotional kind of challenge. And
So one of the things,
oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. I want to
Well,
hear
I
from
was
you.
just thinking about the other thing too is like with body parts. So for example, certain body parts have certain meanings. Like, if you're feeling things in your knees or your legs really have to do with forward movement. And so if there's something going on there and it's like a consistent pain, or maybe it's like it randomly starts showing up, you can start to ask yourself, well, am I having a hard time moving forward? And yeah, so that's your legs. If it's your neck or your shoulders, that really, if you think about it from like a body part perspective, it holds your head. So this is more like, what are you holding onto that you're not willing to let go of, right? What's that weight on your shoulders? I mean, we talk about weight on our shoulders, right? What is it that we're carrying, right? And so you can then start to really dissect it, right? And I mean, I think there are some that are a little bit more nuanced, but if you really just start to think about, okay, how does that body part actually function? Then you can kind of put those two things together, right? Your neck and your neck holds your head. What are you holding? Your legs move you forward. What's keeping you stuck? What's keeping you from moving?
I actually blend a lot of the two. Leo could probably chime in on this, but as a physical therapist, I do, the hands-on work for areas of the body that aren't moving well, but I also will combine some of the energy work with Reiki. And I find that sometimes it's a combination of the two. Like physically, like we've got things that are just so stuck and they're not moving well that it's just creating that kind of blockage. But you also get that from the energy standpoint as well. So it's I find that it can be a little bit of both,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. Um, and I've had people that I've worked on and they're like, no, the pain is here. And I'm like, I know, but physically, like there's not anything super restricted there. Like there's not a reason why, that shoulder is bothering you.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then most often I'll talk to them about maybe some other things that are going on, and where I could maybe refer them if they need to see a talk therapist, or maybe if they would benefit from an energy healing session. So it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and Julia, we've had many conversations about my back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so interesting. And the shoulder that's bothering me right now, Annabelle, is my left shoulder.
Oh.
And so I do have, I won't say who, but there's a strong female energy in my circle that affects me. And that may be holding some weight there. And there may be, even with this individual, a past life connection,
Mm.
I feel, as well. And so I think this could not only be something that's manifesting like in this lifetime, and this person that I'm connected to in this lifetime, I feel like I was connected to them in another lifetime. And so I feel like there's also like almost like a dual connection, that things were brought forward from another lifetime to maybe, I don't know, maybe continue a cycle, that maybe there's some unfinished business.
Right.
Annabelle, I so I know that you had a shift where you went from working, doing something else, and now you're on kind of like a farm. You've got a space to do retreats. What would you say is something that no one tells you about becoming a spiritual business owner? Like, what's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about turning healing into a career?
Um, a misconception. Well, I don't know if this counts as one, but that you can manifest your clients. I had a chat with someone the other day. Yeah, it's someone that I'm working with, but and she's actually in this place where she's trying to transition into or do more of healing work and more like spiritual work. And she's trying to navigate this whole space. And I'm like, look, you need to have both, kind of going back to masculine and feminine energies, but both of these like energies need to come together. You need the structure, you need the discipline, you need the container, and you need the spiritual, like, let's manifest, right? But you can't have one and not the other. And I think that's the biggest thing, where I think, like, when I first started and there was a lot of talk about this, right? It's like, okay, you can manifest and visualize your clients. And I was like, yes, this is great. This is awesome. But when you really, like, when the rubber meets the road, you're like, okay, and the other stuff. And so I think that's really important, like just being really balanced in both of those areas is very helpful. And I think the other piece, which I think can be difficult for a lot of people, is putting yourself out there. Like, you have to use your voice. You have to be comfortable being on camera and being able to talk about what it is that you do in a way that people understand, right? That it's because it's not that you're trying to attract everyone. You're not going to. You're very specific, and the people that are meant to come to you will. But you do still want people to, there's like this level of marketing that you have to learn, and you just kind of learn it along the way, right? Unless you're coming in with that knowledge already. And I think that's something that most people don't think about, because they're like, I just love doing what I'm doing and I love helping other people and I'm really good at this craft or whatever it is. And then you add in all the business side of it, which is, it's not just paying the bills on time, and it's the marketing and how are you going to find the clients and how are you going to talk about yourself and how are you going to write the email, and there's so many things. And I think that can be a misconception, where you just don't realize the amount of stuff that you have to do. And one of the things I'll also say is that you don't have to do it by yourself. And I think when you start to get into the space, when you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, you want to do it alone, mostly because you probably don't have like the money to be paying like a ton to someone else, but you just feel like maybe there's like a control thing there. Like I know what I want it to look a certain way. But I think once you get past like the first few stages or maybe like the first few years, do yourself a favor and really find somebody, even if it's like a freelancer who just does some of your design work or does some of your emails or whatever that you're trying to offload that maybe isn't your true, like you're not really passionate about. That is so helpful because it gives you more time to dedicate to what you're actually good at, which is doing the thing that um, that you studied or what you want to bring to clients.
So now I want you to tell us more about this location that you have, because I did give that little like precursor there.
Oh
But tell us more, because I feel like there's just this component of like being in nature that does help with healing and reconnecting. So tell everybody about like what you have and like what you're doing and about this beautiful spot that I am like, I can't wait to go and check it out.
Yeah, I'm really I feel very blessed and very happy to be where I am now. And what's funny is like I just moved here last June, so it's not like this like it's not, brand well, it's pretty brand new. It feels brand new. It's not like I've been planning it for a long time, but when I finally settled here and all of our stuff was in and it just I looked around because I have a farm. It's called the Medicine Wheel Farm. And I went outside on like a walk and I was like, this place, one, it's like so big just for us, like just for my family. Like this would be such a beautiful place to bring other people to where they could also get to experience being outside, like get to experience the land. And then of course, with all the stuff that I've done, like I've actually hosted events at a farm, back where I used to live. And so I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, but I want to do it here in like my own backyard where I can do my own meditations and my own fire circles and my own cacao ceremonies and all those things. And so once I really started to get that feeling, I'm like, okay, now I need to kind of put the wheels in motion and like, what does it take to actually do this, to make this into like a space that would be safe for people to come to, that would feel like exciting, that would feel healing and kind of rejuvenating in a way. And so that's really what I'm working on and what I'm trying to do. And we hosted our first women's retreat this May, which was amazing. We had such wonderful feedback and we got to do a little bit of everything. We got to do a cacao ceremony and meditation and yoga. And, we went on hiking and did forest bathing on the trails in the back. And it was just so healing, I think, for myself included. I mean, even as the facilitator and the host, I also got a lot out of it. And we have our next all women's retreat happening in September. So, something to look forward to.
Well, we can actually put that in the show notes so we can
Yeah.
advertise that for you as well.
Awesome. That'd be great. Yeah.
Can you also, Annabelle, you've mentioned cacao a couple times. Can you tell us a little bit of what a cacao ceremony is like?
Yeah. And look, I'll call it more of a cacao circle because
Okay.
someone actually, you know what, and someone said this to me like recently where I used to call it a cacao ceremony because I was like, that's what it is. But I realized that there are people that are actually doing like real cacao ceremonies, like in South America and Central America, where I feel like that is more ceremonial. And, maybe what I do is more of like a cacao circle, right? Where cacao is like the main ingredient and it's a component of it. But yeah, I would say last year I ended up taking like a cacao training course and I really loved it because I had had a couple of experiences with cacao and I was like, this is such a beautiful healing medicine. It's very gentle. And when I talk about cacao, I'm also talking about cacao in its like really its most pure form. It's not the cacao you're going to get at the grocery store. It doesn't have any sugar in it, like zero. So it's so bitter. And there's also some ceremony or a ritual in how you prepare the cacao, right? And how you're setting intentions as you're doing it, and what you're putting into it. So all of that is very ritualistic, which I love having these little rituals. And yeah, and I would say the cacao as a medicine in general is really a heart opening medicine. It not just like figuratively, but it literally opens up your blood vessels. It just brings a lot more oxygen into your body, right? And so you're really starting to just open yourself up physically, emotionally, to whatever might be going on for you internally. And I've had times where I've had cacao and I don't know, whatever was going on for me, like I would just start like crying and feeling like my heart feels so immensely grateful when I have cacao. Like everything is like amazing and beautiful, and I just feel so much more appreciative of what's going on. And then at times when I'm like working through things, it also helps me to release a lot. So that's how I've used cacao. And there was a time where I like did it daily and I realized that's probably not, because I think some people use it as a substitute for coffee because of course it does have caffeine in it. So it does give you like, that little boost of energy that you need. But now I just do it like, when I'm doing an event, or if like every now and then I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to have like a cup of cacao while I'm meditating or something. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
So, speaking of like a daily ritual or a daily practice, what's something that is one daily ritual or practice that helps to keep you grounded?
Exercise. Like if I don't do some type of a physical activity, and that can just be going outside and throwing the ball with my dog, or like actually going to the gym and, getting on the bike and sweating it out. Like for me, that is so beneficial. And when I don't do it, I can feel it. And I think everybody else can feel it around me. So I think most people in my family are like, yeah, go to the gym, please. Like go do something. Because again, it starts to get built up, right? Where like, it's all of like my tension, my stress, and everything kind of gets like, it's stored, and that helps me to release it. And I also find that by being physically active, I'm also a lot more creative. Like I get the most ideas when I'm on like at the gym, when I'm sweating, when I'm like working out. I get a lot of like little like pings. It's like, ooh, do this, or like that's an inspiration thing. Yeah.
What's a spiritual belief that you've changed your mind about?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough one. Do you have one? What's yours?
I mean, I think like I grew up and I grew up Catholic. And so I feel like there was so much stuff that growing up, it was like a very strict thing. So when it came to like certain um, practices or things that were available, it was like, the blinders were on. There was so much that I feel like I wasn't really like open to, just because like I was told not to, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that like one of the things that I've shifted is that just because it sounds scary or didn't fit into that neat little box that was given to me doesn't mean that it doesn't still have a way or an aspect to provide something for my life. And maybe it's a lesson for me to learn that's not for me, but maybe it's something that really isn't so scary or isn't as taboo or wrong as like I was led to believe when I was younger.
Mm.
So I think that like that's probably the biggest thing for me is like not closing off and shutting it out just because I was told to.
Yeah, I love that.
So I wouldn't say it was just like, one spiritual belief, but it was just my general spiritual belief. And I think a lot of that started when I went and did my teacher training for yoga, is people were like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean, what am I doing? And they're like, well, I thought you were Catholic. And I'm like, I am. They're like, well, doesn't that go against
Yeah. Yeah.
isn't that against your beliefs? Like, isn't it kind of like a cult? And I'm like, yoga? Like, are we talking about the same thing here? Like, wait a minute, what's going on? It's like I've met so many beautiful souls, like such like light inside of them. And it's there from all walks of life and from different cultures and different beliefs and different practices. And there's been so much beauty that I found in so many areas that didn't fit that, neat and nice little box that, I've been shown. But it's also things have, I think, evolved in a way that it's allowed me to practice a lot of the beliefs I did grow up with, but in a more profound way.
Yes, I totally resonate with that. Because I also, well, I grew up Catholic. I am Catholic still.
Yeah.
And I actually talk about this on my own podcast where I've sort of been like on this journey of like figuring out like, how to connect more to my faith, and do I or don't I, or like what does that look like? And but it's funny because I just like when I moved here, I had to change my church, and I found one that's close by, and it's lovely. Like I'm so happy. I love it there. And I signed up for one of the ministries because I was like, oh, I always love supporting and I love helping out. And one of the ministries that I signed up for was this like prayer ministry. And I was like, this feels so right because it's almost like what I do with Reiki, right? Like people come in, they need help, they need support, and I can, somehow, some way contribute to that. So, of course, like everyone is super welcoming, like, yeah, we're so grateful to have you. And they hand me these like it was like a couple sheets of paper that sort of went over like how it works, like what to do, things like that, what to expect. And as I'm reading it, one of the things in there said like, if you believe in Reiki, or like Reiki is not God's work or something like that, right? And so of course I'm like, oh no, I can't even, not that I would say like, by the way, it's just not a part of the conversation anyway. But of course, like inside, I was like, oh, geez, I can't tell people what I do, like, what are they going to think? So there was totally that feeling inside of me. But, I sort of said to myself, I'm like, look, I'm not going to bring it up. And if somehow people find out that I'm a Reiki master, like, whatever, like, it is what it is. We'll deal with that situation when that comes. But I'm like, I'm going to come to this and be present in the way that I know how, which is, yes, I'm going to pray with those that come in, but I am also going to do Reiki. Like I am also going to give them that like healing energy. And from the perspective of Reiki goes where it needs to go, I'm just going to let it flow and let it happen. And that's also a part of my prayer. And so I've just kind of like allowed myself to be in that space and show up how I am. And again, not having to name anything or call it out or, but I did have that like feeling. I was like, oh, okay. I not everyone understands it, especially when you grow up in like a religious community or religious space. They do have very distinct like black and white, like astrology and energy healing is here and religion is here. And if you're not in one of those camps, then you can't really be in the middle. And I always see myself as being somewhere in the middle, right? I don't know why you can't have both. And so I don't know. That's how I operate my life.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So we're in the same place. It's,
Yeah.
Exactly.
we still, my family and I, we still try to go to church most Sundays, and we still practice, the parts that we believe in. And I really, I feel very, proud to say I believe in God. And I also know that he put me here to do specific work as somebody to hold space for other people and, guide them through things and help with their healing process. I don't look at it as I'm the one doing the healing. I look at it as that I'm just being able to provide healing space for them because of how I was designed, what I was meant to do,
Exactly.
And I think also with both of you participating in your religion, in your faith, and also believing in the Reiki camp, right? It's showing people and giving people like a true, authentic presentation of like what that type of person is like, that you can blend both, whether or not people know you're a Reiki master or not. The way you present yourself and the way you carry yourself, authentically, and God knows that authentically you are the person you are, and you can have both.
Exactly.
And I think the other part of it is that, it's not I don't think it's my job to force you to believe something,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Reiki or whether it's, a practice, or it's my job maybe to show you that it's there,
Mm-hmm.
but not to force anything to happen.
Right.
So I'm like, no judgment. Really, I just want to be here. I think we had a little chat, everyone, like, Annabelle and Leo and I spoke after our little mini episode. And one of the things that Annabelle had shared with me is that I'm a Scorpio, and I'm that person that will go deep with people, and I will hold your hand and we'll go deep together, and we'll stay there. Like, this is exactly what we were talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah.
And God made you that way, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about that, right? And
Yep.
I go back to like the astrology, like God made that chart. He made you the way that you are with all those exact placements for a reason. And so it's like, how do you work with what you've got, with what you were given, the challenges, the gifts, like all of it? Because we're all just trying to figure it out. And it's just like, can we just understand ourselves just like a little bit better so that we can figure out how to navigate and how to be more self-aware? I find myself lately like having so many like I'll have like a little like inner dialogue before I even speak now. Like it's almost like I'll play out what I would have said, and I catch myself and I'm like, no, that's like not helpful at all. Why would I even say that? And then I say the other thing, and it's much softer and gentler. And so like I don't know, I totally see growth in that lately. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I caught myself, and I didn't actually say that other thing that I probably would have just blurted out. And I said like the other thing. I was like, oh, okay. Because,
I
then I'm
think,
always
yeah.
trying. Oh, go ahead, Leah.
No, I was just going to say that's just, I think, an example of like your discernment.
Exactly.
I tell my kids, you have your thinking bubble and your talking bubble. And sometimes things should just stay in the thinking bubble and not come out of the talking
That's a
bubble.
great example.
And sometimes if it comes out of the talking bubble and hasn't gone to the thinking bubble first, we might have a
Uh-oh.
problem.
That's funny.
I'm gonna use that with my kids.
I know that's a great one. Yeah.
It's a good one for kids because it helps them kind of understand. I think a lot of adults are like, wow, that makes great sense. But how do you explain that discernment to kids? So that's one of the things that we do is thinking bubbles and talking bubbles.
I will remember that for my granddaughter as these words are flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Annabelle, if you could leave our listeners with maybe like one practice to begin doing to help maybe like interrupt old patterns or some of the thought processes that they get stuck in, what would you encourage them to do?
I would say voice memos. And I realized that it would either be journaling. If you have a practice of journaling, journaling's great. But sometimes things come to you when you're not by your pen and your pad. So the voice memo on your phone is like the best thing for that. And I actually have tons of my own voice memos that are sometimes like so cringeworthy to listen to. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. And like, I'm crying in some of them. Like, I'm like, what is going on? Like, they're embarrassing. But that has been my way of processing sometimes the way that I'm feeling or my confusion or my doubts. I'm literally talking to myself. And I think that's probably the easiest thing. It doesn't take a lot of time. You already have your phone with you, right? You're doing it in the car. You can be on the go. You could be walking wherever you are, and just like capturing it. You don't even have to listen to it ever again. You can delete it, but the fact that you've got it out of your thinking bubble and like out into like the space, out into the world, like it's gone, right? And maybe not totally fully gone, but it's one way of just getting it out of your system.
That's a great example of if you do have something in your thinking bubble and you need to get it out, but it
Right.
shouldn't come out in your talking bubble. Maybe it does come out in a memo that you're just sharing with yourself,
Yes.
or maybe it does go down on paper. And then you do have that power of if you really feel like, oh, that doesn't resonate with me, you burn that piece of paper and it's gone. Or you delete that voice memo and it's gone, but it's at least gotten it. It's not holding, it's not staying in that container in you.
Yeah.
Annabelle, before we go, can you tell people how they can reach you and how they can work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me at www.nunatherapy.com, or you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Like I would say most of the platforms out there, just at Nuna, Nuna therapy. Yeah. So that's where you can find me and find my videos and comments and things like that.
And I just want to add one thing also, just that Annabelle is also part of the Soul Searching Sanctuary practitioners. And if you are a member, that she's offering an exclusive discount on her services as well.
Yes.
Amazing. All right, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And it has been an absolute pleasure, Annabelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
both for having me.
yeah, and Leo, anything else that you've got to wrap up with?
No, I think that's a wrap.
All right. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And to our listeners, if something stirred in your body, your breath, or your awareness during this conversation, trust that. Healing doesn't always arrive as answers. Sometimes it arrives as resonance.
And if you want more information on Mystery of the Soul, go to our website at www.mysteryofthesoul.com. And if you're interested in more about Leo's services, go to his website at www.leojmccarthy.com, and you can always book a free discovery session with him.
And if you're interested in the services that I'm able to provide, please visit arisewithjulia.com for any information about Dr. Julia LeBlanc. This has been Mystery of the Soul. Until next time, stay curious, stay embodied, and keep listening.